Welcome to the School of Wordcraft and Worldmancy. This is Feedback Frenzy.
Hello and welcome to another Submit Saturday. My name is WriterGreg, and here we are to review another fiction or world-building article that had been submitted at wgc.bz/submit. So thank you so much for those who have submitted their articles at that Google form so that you too can be a part of a Submit Saturday. All right, now today for this article is something a little bit different. It is not a world building article, but this is some actual fiction. And what has been requested is a content edit. So not going to focus too much on the grammar. I'll point it out if there becomes an issue, but we're going to focus on the content. Sky Day, the 17th of waning. 709 CE, Common Era. Okay. Oh boy. I like that the name is the first thing I see. That's just a terrifying looking name to try to pronounce without help. Zefiev. The god of wind, song, and mischief looked up at the fading sun as it slowly lowered toward the horizon. He had only until it passed behind the mountains at the other end of the valley before he would be imprisoned. His fairly earned sentence. He closed his eyes against the bright warmth of the sun, aware that he would know only darkness and color for a full 500 years. Okay, aware that he would know only darkness and cold for a full 500 years. All he deserved and more. Farewell, uncle, he murmured. A hand clutched at his sleeve, drawing his attention away from the setting sun. Please, Zekfiv, the Bobs. They came from Lyria today. They tell me the Lyrian are smithing more spears than they need for hunting, crafting larger knives than we've ever heard of. I think they mean to do us harm. The eldest of the small city of Zephi squawked. We need you now, more than ever. Isn't there anything you can do to change your siblings' minds? Zefiev looked down at the smaller mortal man. There was a time in the not-too-distant past when he would have smiled, but his grief was still too raw, too recent. No, he said simply, the judgment may have come from my siblings, but my sentence came from Mother Sky and Father Earth. Even if I could go against their will, and I cannot, I would not try. Okay, so just going back here, you used the word squawked here. The eldest of the small city, Zephi, squawked. But then you did say here, the smaller mortal man. Well, that's good because you're talking about mountains, you're talking about looking in the sunsets, you're talking about a god of wind, song, and mischief. And so here I was thinking this was a bird because of the use of the word squawked. But you did well to clarify that this is a smaller mortal man. He pressed the scroll he had written into the elder's hands. This is the only thing I can do for you, for my people. Please try to understand. I deserve this. I have earned this. Interesting. We don't know what he's done yet. He turned, then, and slouched toward the building his brother, Cleic, and his sister Astara, had built for him. He felt, rather than saw, Uncle's sun fading from the sky as he waited with his hand on the handle. Soon, it would be soon. And then it would feel like an eternity. Would he even be sane when he came out of this? As a hand covered Zekfiv's where it lay on the handle. The hand was dark, as his was light. Zefiev followed up the arm to the soft beige shirt, and then the dark face of his brother Klek. Beside him stood their fair sister Astara. They were the ones who had passed judgment on him, the only two of their nearly 200 siblings still speaking to him. Brother, said Kelek smoothly. Zefiev. Be strong, was Astara's addition. Do your penance, brother. She turned away then and walked back down the hill. She never looked back. He was surprised. He could not blame her. Now you said and walked back down the hill.
Great job, sprinters. It's time to rest.
That implies that he knew that
Marchers
she
keep
walked
going.
up. If he didn't know where she came from or didn't know that she had walked up the hill or began her journey to the current spot from down the hill, I'd just say, and she walked down the hill. Whereas back says it implies that he knew that she had come up the hill earlier. But Kleak, kind and understanding Kleak, hesitated. You know, don't you, younger brother? We do not wish. Shut up, older brother, Zefiev snapped. Leave me to my well-deserved punishment. I earned it, and the enmity of our other siblings. I know this. I did this. His darker sibling still lingered. I love you, Zefiev. For all your faults, you are my younger brother, and I love you. Please return to us when you have paid your price. What happened with Lurias was a blow to us all. But let us not lose you as well, please. Please, Zefiev. Zefiev's answer was to turn the handle, open the door to his cell, and close it behind him. The cell was dark. There was no whisper of the wind through the hard stone walls. He could not even hear the sounds of the people gathering outside. If Kleak continued to try to talk to him, he did not know. He could hear only his own breathing, hear his heartbeat. There was only silence. There was no warmth here, only the cold of the old stone. He could already feel the heat leaching from his skin. Already he missed the heat of the sun, the warm touch of the wind. He longed for the touch of another, be they god or mortal. But he couldn't have that. He would be alone for these 500 years. So alone. If anyone stepped through the door for 500 years, he would be forced to kill them. It was part of the bargain he had made. His people would know him only as a murderer, not as the loving god of song and mischief he tried so hard to be, not as the voice behind the wind in their ears, only as the bringer of death. He buried his head in his hands, feeling the tears rise. Frustration and grief sang through him, and he sank to his knees. He clenched his teeth against the rising scream in his throat, rubbing the tears of fear, pain, and grief from his face. It was as it should be. Okay, interesting. So this is 709, and now we're jumping to 1214. Caretaker Taka sighed and glared down the Ushina Norai. She was sitting on the floor in the puddle of discarded bits of dough, all that remained of the bowl of jam buns that had been on the table. When Taka had gone to use the restroom, the bowl had been in the middle of the table. Now, the 3-year-old Ushina was smeared with jam from the buns. Ushina. She grinned up at him, drooling and unrepentant. He knew he shouldn't be angry with her. She was only a toddler. The other children who usually helped mind her were in classes, and he had left her alone. Hadn't he heard from the elder caretaker 1,000 times that turning your back on a toddler was a sure way to allow that toddler to get into mischief? I don't know what a jam bun is, but I want one. Taka, Ushina waved with a sticky grin. Jam! He forced himself to take a deep breath and walked over to the sink for a wet rag. He picked up Ushina and wiped most of the jam off her face and clothes before setting her outside in the garden with a toy. He listened to her prattle with the toy
Sprinters,
as he swept
on your
up,
mark.
swept
Get
up
set. Go.
as he swept up the remaining bits of the buns. He didn't notice her babble was wandering off until he realized he hadn't heard her for a few moments. Only the sound of the wind whistling through the streets of Zephi. He set the broom aside and went to the door. Ushina was already turning the corner at the end of the street. Cursing quietly, he raced after the errant child. The street she had turned down let into several others. When he got there, he could not tell where she had gone until he spotted the dropped toy. Oh no. He raced up into the disused cul-de-sac. He was just in time to see the door of one of the buildings he did not want to see open, swinging forward before the naughty toddler he was chasing. Ushina! He called, trying not to let the frantic note creep into his voice. She turned with a grin, toppled over it, and fell inside the door. She stood again, looked at something in the room, and wandered deeper inside. The wind howled, whipping hard at Taka's heels and pressing him towards the building. Almost, he thought, he could hear that in that howl. He thought, he could hear words in that howl. What was the wind telling the mad god? No, Toka groaned and hurried forward. He wasn't sure why he was bothering. She would already be dead. Maybe he could ask the god for her clothes at least. The mad god had been known to give things back sometimes before slamming his door shut. Or that was what the story said. He knelt He knelt at the open doorway and bowed. God, Zefiev, please forgive my disturbance, I beg you, but... Taka! Ushina's voice called. As he heard the stomping of her tiny feet on the stone floor, she ran to him. He wrapped his arms around the unharmed child. He looked into the darkened gloom of the prison and saw a glitter of luminescent blue eyes. He swallowed hard. Are you her father? Asked a voice from within. He shook his head violently. No, God, Zefiev. He stood, holding Ushina, and backed away, his eyes dropping. Her father perished in the war before she was born. Her mother did not survive the birth. I see. There was silence. Keep the child safe, caretaker Taka. Do not allow her to return here. Taka bowed low, still holding Ushina. She squealed and clutched at him like it was a game. Yes, God Zefiev, I will try. Do better than try, Taka, and I'll close my door. He nodded and slammed the door shut. He sprinted away from the building, aware of sweat on his face and neck. He looked down at the child in his arms. Ushina grinned at him, then waved over his shoulder. Bye, Zefiev, she called. Taka clutched at her for a moment, relieved she was unharmed. The gravity of what had just happened, what she had just said, dawned on him. He started to walk. Come now, Sheena. I think I had best take you to the elders. Wow, okay. Interesting. I need to do some math. Where's my calculator? Okay, so 1214 minus... it's 505 years. He doesn't have to kill anyone. Interesting. He has to kill... he had to kill anyone who would walk in that for 500 years, but now it's 505 years, and maybe the tradition it just scared them so much. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Things that were awesome. I'm of the belief that prologues may or may not be necessary. Just start telling the story. And start telling the story of the person who is or will be the main character. So Zefiev, and please forgive me for the terrible mispronunciations, to me is or should be the main character of this story. If this does not feel like a short story. This feels like a beginning of a much longer story. But I'm not sure whose story it is. Standing by themselves, the two halves of these stories, I think do pretty well. And let's see, how many words in the beginning here? Word count. Okay, 785. 787. So, okay, so we're roughly half. Yeah, okay, so we're roughly half. Wow, exactly 1,500 words. Well done. Yeah, you got that right on the nose. All right. Okay, things that are awesome. Great world building. I was a little confused about the Zefiev, the god, and the word squawk, thinking, because this could be anything. I had no idea what was happening coming into this story. I don't even have a title, so I don't know what to expect. I guess I had birds on the brain or something, thinking that this deity could have been a bird. But from the appearances here, this seems to be just a regular standard humanoid set of characters. The interesting thing is, so this was a really good starting. I felt the emotion, and see that's what long stories such as novellas and novels and epics, they deliver an experience. They deliver growth, whereas short stories need to deliver emotion. And in the first half, I felt that emotion of just regret. Yep, I earned this. I totally earned this. It's my fault. I shouldn't have done whatever was done. And it's interesting, I don't know what has been done. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to know. If this was the entire thing, okay, I still didn't need to know. But I liked that it provides a potential hook going forward, depending on whose story will be told. So we have four characters in the first. We have the god, the two brothers, the two siblings, and then the chief. Yeah. Um, Clayic and his sister Astra were a little bit of flat characters, but I don't know how much rounder they could have been in such a short time. They were the ones that sentenced him to this 500 years. And I guess I would have liked to known more of the description of the area they were on. They were on a hill. I know this because he, walked up it and she walked down it. I know that he was sitting there on a sunset, so I know that he was sitting on the west side of a hill. Sorry. Yeah, it was done well. In the limitations of 1,500
Sprinters
words,
and marchers, time is up.
it was good. I felt that the paragraphing was good. I liked his resignation. That, you know what, I earned this, I'm going to do it. To me, it sounded like he went in there and he didn't even need to have a guard. He was willing to stay there. So that was interesting. Caretaker Taka. He's not a very good caretaker, gotta say. I know it had to happen for the plot for the child to walk away, but you never put a toddler outside without a fence. Okay? My wife works at a daycare, and so I see, I just think of this caretaker. That sounds like Taka's job is caretaker. And yeah, that 3-year-old. Yeah, what is this? The 80s? Jess, you bring up a good point. We should not judge other time periods based on our own preconceived notions of what it is today. So yeah, could they have put them out just, yeah. Taka just, doesn't seem too bright. It's because he just put it, he didn't notice her babble wandering until he realized she hadn't heard anything for a few minutes. Okay. Now, 3-year-olds can't walk that fast. And so he must have been not paying attention. Now, is he only watching off after the one kid, or were there other children he was watching after that would have distracted him? I don't know. Mine was freaking so fast. Okay. Fair. But when a 3-year-old is fast, it's usually a chasing or a running away. A wandering toddler, I don't know if they're that fast. A determined toddler, yes. I will agree, and especially because we chase after toddlers half bent over with our arms out like that. It's not very efficient. True, wandering and just looking at stuff can take forever. Yeah, there would need to be something that this child fixated upon to be able to draw it. He, she, Ushina. Oh, her face. Okay, to draw the baby child away from the house so fastly? Were they chasing a butterfly? Were they chasing a leaf in the wind? You know what? I guess I'm going for a little realism. It may be more realistic to have Taka being more distracted than Ushina being super fast and, walking with purpose straight into the jaws of a mad god. Okay? I do like how he would hear words that in that howl. What was the wind telling the mad god? Okay. Were there steps up to this place? Is this the same building? I'm kind of getting the feeling it was the same building that he was pressed in. Is he still in his prison? So technically, it is 5 years later.
Stop talking, Greg. It's time to write.
In those 5 years, had he moved to another location? That what was the wind telling the mad god line is so good. Yeah, I agree with that. What was the wind telling the mad god? But so I'm a little bit confused about the situation here. Why is there a daycare within a 2-minute walking distance of the prison of a mad god? Okay, mad enough that people know that if you walk into that house, you are dead, and you would have to beg just to get the clothes of the dead back. Yeah. So the vibe I'm getting, I really like the juxtaposition between the pre-prison and post-prison god. I really like the questions that it brings up. The questions about why did they build a city and a daycare next to the prison, that does kind of confuse me. Was there a city there, or had the mad god moved into town? And why did he move in there? Is it just, a cul-de-sac? She turned with a grin, toppled over, and fell inside the door. She stood again, looked at something in the room, and wandered deeper inside. The wind howled, whipping hard at Taka's heels and pressing him towards the building. Almost, he thought, he could hear words in that howl. What was the wind telling the mad god? Yeah, worst new neighbor ever. That is so true. I'm intrigued. I want to read more. I think that's the definition of success is that a reader wants to read more. But there are some elements of confusion that I have here. And it could be just that you were limited to the 1,500 words. It looked like you may have had to chop things out to match the 1,500 words, so you had an entire story arc in there. Like you had 2 chapters, basically. Things that are awesome. The Mad God. The loving siblings who were imprisoning their brother. The brother willing to be imprisoned. He wasn't this defiant, unrepentant person. He did it, and he deserved it, and he recognized it. I think that's an interesting character attribute to have. So I do like that. Bored. Was I bored? Mm, not really. I mean, the, I mean, opening at a sunset, the mortal was asking for help for a battle. That was kind of there, but it's important for character definition because it's the interaction with the mortal chief that helps explain his decision to stay in there more and better than it. So I think the character of the chief is important. So there, I so no, I don't think I was bored in any part of this. I do a little on the tired side. Um, and I think I mentioned the points of confusion that I may have had in beginning. You know, the worst neighbor just the mad god just moved into the neighborhood next to a child care center. You know that is a little bit on the confusing. Sure, it was expedient and had to happen that way. Um, but yeah, I would want to see more about Taka and the problems. Unless Taka isn't the hero. I don't know who the hero is. Maybe that's a confusing thing. Whose story are you telling? Is it Zafiev's? Is it Taka's? So we have roughly we have two scenes here. Who's being featured in scene 3? So I don't know whose story this is, and it may need to have the third scene because whoever gets the third scene, I would think that they are the protagonist of the story. So if the next scene is Zefiev having the door shut and he's sitting there stewing, wondering why he let the girl free, or um, you know, that I think that's what I would want to see next. If I was to have a third scene added to this prologue or chapter 1 or whatever, I would want to see the mad god just sitting there stewing over how he has changed over the last 500 years. The fact that he's called the mad god, the fact that, but maybe the relief that he let the child go free. My mom ran a child care from our house, and our neighbor could be called a mad beep. It fits. Fair enough. Yeah, so I don't want to know. I really don't care to know more about Taka's story. I'm more interested in Yushina's story than I am Taka's, because that's one determined toddler. I would love to know. Oh, so here are my I guess my two things I would like to see next. If this was because this is a prologue, and is this Yushina's story? Is this how she becomes the hero, and uh, Zefiev remembers the girl and becomes a patron or something, and she becomes a warlock? I don't know. But I would much rather see Yushina's story than Taka's. I would love to see Zefiev's side of this interaction and his relief or his whatever for being able to let the child go. So as far as, I hope that answers some questions. It may have been a little rambling, but good stuff here. Yeah, I like what I'm liking what I'm reading, and that's the best part of it. So thank you so much, Equake Tempest, for sharing this article with us. If you would like to have your fiction critiqued or reviewed, or your world building articles reviewed, please submit the link over wgc.bz/submit, and you too can have your stuff critiqued. Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time.
Thanks for watching this Feedback Frenzy. Be sure to show your support by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell. WriterGreg offers coaching sessions to help bring your world to life, create compelling stories, and accomplish your creative goals. Please visit wgc.bz/coaching for more details.